You wake without being certain why. There is no alarm, no bell, no voice calling from another room. Morning arrives without ceremony, as it often does, even when the world has been changed beyond recognition. Your eyes open slowly. Light enters the room in a way that feels unfamiliar, thinner than usual, filtered through air that seems heavier than it should be. Dust floats where dust has never lingered before. It moves gently, lazily, as if unsure whether it should still exist. You remain still for a moment, not because of fear, but because movement feels unnecessary. The world has already done enough moving for one lifetime. The room around you is quieter than silence, not peaceful, simply emptied. You listen without intending to. There are no footsteps in the street, no distant vendors, no carts, no morning greetings drifting through open windows. Even the insects, which usually announce the return of daylight, seem unsure of their role. You sit up carefully. The floor beneath you is warm in places, cold in others, as if it has forgotten how to regulate itself. A wall nearby is discoloured, not burned exactly, just altered. The surface looks tired. You notice that you are breathing shallowly. The air carries a taste you don't recognise. Metallic, faint, persistent. You do not react. You simply accept it, the way people accept weather. Outside, the city exists, but only barely. You step toward the opening where a door once stood. It no longer closes. It no longer opens. It simply remains, paused mid-purpose. Wood splintered but not destroyed. Hinges bent, holding on out of habit rather than function. When you step into the street, you expect devastation. Instead, you find stillness. Buildings remain standing, though changed. Roof tiles lie where they fell, undisturbed. A bicycle rests against a wall, its owner absent but not announced. Laundry hangs from a line, stiff now, unmoving. The city looks like it has been interrupted mid-thought. You walk slowly, not because of injury, but because speed feels disrespectful. Each step sounds louder than it should. Your foot meets gravel, glass, fragments of objects that once had names. There are people. Not many. Not gathered. Not speaking. They move independently, like drifting punctuation marks across a sentence that no longer knows how to end. A woman kneels beside a shallow basin, rinsing her hands though the water has turned grey. A man sits on a step, staring at nothing in particular. A child stands barefoot, holding a cup that is empty, but still treated as if it contains something important. No one asks questions. Questions belong to the world before. You pass a shop front where the shutters are half open. Inside, items rest on shelves exactly as they did yesterday. Bowls, cloth, paper goods, everything waiting to be purchased in a future that may or may not return. Time behaves strangely now. Morning does not advance. It lingers. You notice smells, burned wood, damp earth, something organic that you choose not to identify. These scents layer over each other slowly, without urgency. Somewhere, someone coughs. The sound is soft. It does not echo. You realise you are thirsty. The recognition arrives gently, without alarm. You follow it like a suggestion rather than a command. At a public well, the bucket rests crookedly. Someone has drawn water recently. The rope is damp. You drink without savouring. The water tastes wrong, but it is water, and that is enough. Around you, the city is performing small acts of survival. Someone sweeps debris from a doorway that no longer leads anywhere. Someone else rearranges stones into a line that suggests order, even if only temporarily. These actions are not hopeful. They are habitual. Habit survives when intention does not. As the sun climbs slightly higher, light reveals details you had missed. Shadows stretch across uneven ground. Cracks in walls resemble maps of places you will never visit. You realise that sound is beginning to return, not noise but presence. A piece of fabric shifts. A loose board creaks. Wind finds a way through the city and tests each remaining structure gently, as if asking permission. No one speaks of yesterday. Yesterday has already used all the words it needed. You sit down on a low step and allow yourself to exist without purpose for a moment. This is not rest, it is something else, a pause without promise. Above you, the sky is unchanged, blue, indifferent, endless. It offers no explanation, it does not apologize. Morning continues. You begin walking without deciding to. There is no destination forming in your mind, no errand waiting to be completed. Your body moves simply because stillness, after a while, begins to feel heavier than motion. The street beneath your feet no longer behaves as a street should. It rises unevenly, dips where foundations have settled, and narrows where walls have leaned inward, uncertain of their balance. Familiar distances feel altered. What once took moments to cross now requires careful attention. Every step is placed deliberately. There are no vehicles moving, no wheels turning, no engines waiting impatiently. The wide roads, once shaped for traffic and urgency, now exist for walking alone. They have become long corridors of quiet. You notice how wide the city truly is when nothing fills it. Buildings line the streets like witnesses. Some lean forward slightly, others pull back, leaving gaps where structures once stood. These empty spaces do not look violent. They look unfinished, as though the city paused during construction and forgot to resume. Signs remain attached to walls. Painted characters fade gently under the sun, still advertising goods that no one is buying today. A hanging sign sways just enough to remind you that wind has not abandoned the city. You pause at an intersection. Normally this place would decide things for you, left or right, stop or go. Today it offers no instruction. The painted lines on the road are cracked but visible, still insisting on rules that no longer apply. You stand there longer than necessary. In the absence of sound, space becomes more noticeable. You feel the width of the street around you, the height of the buildings, the open sky pressing down gently from above. The city feels both larger and smaller at the same time. Somewhere far away, something collapses softly. The sound is not loud. It does not echo. It simply happens, then disappears. You do not turn toward it. There is no urgency in acknowledging it. As you continue, you begin to recognize places not by what they are, but by what they no longer contain. Here was a corner where people gathered. You remember standing still once, waiting for others to pass, listening to overlapping conversations that meant nothing to you. Now the corner is wide and empty. The air lingers there, unused. Here was a crossing where you once hurried. The urgency has drained from it completely. The street no longer demands speed. Your footsteps are the loudest thing you can hear. They sound wrong, too sharp, too present. You adjust your pace unconsciously, slowing until even your own movement seems to blend back into the city rather than interrupt it. You pass a bicycle lying on its side. It has not been damaged beyond use. The wheel turns slightly when the wind touches it. The basket still holds a folded cloth. Nothing about it suggests finality. It appears temporarily forgotten, as though its owner has stepped away for only a moment. You do not touch it. Ownership feels uncertain now. Further along you see a narrow street branching off. It leads into a residential area, quieter even before everything changed. The entrance is partially blocked by fallen debris, but there is space to pass through if you move carefully. You choose it without reasoning. These smaller streets feel different. They absorb sound more readily. Walls stand closer together. Windows stare downward instead of outward. The city feels like it is holding its breath here. A door stands open. Inside, a room waits. Tatami mats are scattered with fine dust. A low table sits exactly where it was left. On it, a cup remains upright, though empty. The room does not appear abandoned. It appears paused. You remain outside. Entering feels like crossing into something too private. Even now, even after everything, there are boundaries you instinctively respect. You continue on. The street bends gently, and with the bend comes a subtle change in light. Shadows stretch differently here. The sun catches edges you had not noticed before. Roof tiles, cracked plaster, the grain of wood exposed where walls have split. The city has become a collection of surfaces. You begin to see patterns, cracks repeating, debris settling into similar shapes, shadows aligning across different streets as though coordinated. These details occupy your attention completely. They leave no room for larger thoughts. This focus feels necessary. At the far end of the street, a person stands. They are not facing you. They are looking down at the ground, holding something small, perhaps a tool, perhaps nothing important. They do not notice you at first. When they do, there is no reaction beyond acknowledgement. No greeting is exchanged. Words feel excessive. You pass each other quietly, sharing the space for only a moment before continuing on separate paths. There is no sense of isolation in this encounter, only recognition, proof that movement still exists. As the street opens again into a wider road, the city reveals more of itself. Large buildings dominate here, administrative offices, warehouses, structures built for organisation and permanence. They still stand, but they no longer impose authority. Without sound and activity, they feel strangely hollow. Stairs lead upward to entrances that no one is using. Doors hang open or closed without significance. Windows reflect the sky without curiosity. You walk past them without slowing. These places belong to a version of life that feels distant now. Further ahead, debris becomes more concentrated. Pieces of masonry lie in careful disorder, as though arranged intentionally. You step around them, occasionally over them, adjusting your balance. There is no rush. Balance matters more than direction. You notice marks on the ground, footprints, dragged lines, the evidence of others moving before you. These traces overlap and fade, forming a quiet map of shared movement. The city is not empty. It is simply quieter than it has ever been. At another intersection, you stop again. From here, you can see long stretches of road extending outward, each one fading into a soft blur where dust and light mix together. The view feels expansive, almost peaceful, if not for the weight beneath it. You choose a direction arbitrarily. As you walk, your breathing settles into rhythm with your steps. Inhale, exhale. The pattern becomes the only structure you need. You realize you have not heard a single voice. Not shouting, not crying, not whispering. The absence feels intentional, as though the city has collectively agreed to lower its volume. Sound, like everything else, has been rationed. A loose sheet of paper slides across the road ahead of you, pushed gently by the wind. It turns once, twice, then comes to rest against a curb. The writing on it is smudged, unreadable. Whatever message it once carried no longer matters. You pass it without stopping. There are moments when you expect memory to interrupt. Images of what these streets once looked like, sounded like, felt like. But memory stays distant. It does not intrude. Perhaps it knows it is not welcome yet. You reach a place where the road slopes downward toward the river. The water is not visible yet, but you can sense its presence in the air. The city feels cooler here, more open. The slope makes walking easier. Gravity assists gently, without urgency. Your pace remains slow. At the edge of the riverbank, you finally hear something continuous. Water. It moves steadily, unaffected by what has happened above it. The sound is soft but persistent. It does not react to you. It does not slow. You stand there longer than you intend to. The river reflects the pale sky, carrying debris that you do not examine closely. It has always carried things away. Today is no different. Behind you, the city remains still. Ahead of you, the river continues. Neither asks anything of you. Eventually, you turn back. The walk back feels shorter, though you follow no exact path. Streets blend together now. Corners feel less distinct. Direction has lost importance. What matters is motion, presence, the simple act of occupying space. As the light shifts slightly, barely noticeable but enough to register, you realize that time is still moving forward, slowly, quietly, without announcement. The streets hold their shape. They do not collapse. They do not heal. They wait. And for now, you walk among them.
You begin to notice water before you feel thirst. It is not an urgent awareness. It arrives gently, like a quiet suggestion forming at the edge of thought. Your mouth feels dry, but not painfully so. Your hands feel dusty, coated with a thin layer of the city that now clings to everything. Water has become visible in a way it never was before. Before, it moved unnoticed through pipes, filled basins without ceremony, disappeared down drains without gratitude. Now it announces itself through absence, through sound, through the small rituals forming around it. You follow the slope of the street toward a public pump. It stands where it always has, metal darkened by use, handle worn smooth by countless hands. Someone has placed a small stone beside it, as if marking its importance. You pause before using it. There is no line, but there is a sense of order, a rhythm established by people who arrive, draw water, and leave without conversation. You wait, even though no one is there at the moment. Waiting feels correct. When you finally grip the handle, the metal is cool. You move it slowly, listening to the familiar resistance. The sound of water arriving is quiet, but unmistakable. It flows unevenly at first, then steadies. You watch it fill a container that is not yours. The vessel is chipped along the rim, its surface dulled by years of use. It may have belonged to someone nearby, or it may have been left for anyone who needed it. Ownership has become flexible. You drink carefully. The water tastes faintly metallic, carrying with it the memory of the ground it passed through. It is not refreshing in the way you remember, but it fulfills its purpose. The dryness in your mouth recedes, replaced by a neutral sensation you accept without comment. You rinse your hands next. Dust lifts from your skin in thin streams, turning the water cloudy before it spills onto the ground. You rub slowly, as if washing is now an act requiring attention. Your fingers feel unfamiliar, slightly stiff. Around you, others approach the pump one by one. A woman sets down a small pot and fills it halfway, then stops. She does not fill it completely. Perhaps she is conserving energy. Perhaps she knows she does not need more. She lifts it with both hands and walks away without looking back. A man arrives with a cloth wrapped around his forearm. He unwraps it carefully, exposing skin that has been burned but not bandaged. He lets water flow over it briefly, then rewraps the cloth and leaves. No one speaks. The pump does not pause between people. It simply waits. As you step away, you notice the marks water leaves behind. Darkened patches on the ground trace where containers have been set down, where spills have occurred. These marks form a quiet record of need. You walk toward a narrow channel where water runs slowly, collecting runoff from higher streets. It is not clean, but it moves steadily. Someone has placed stones along its edge to keep the path clear. You kneel and dip your fingers in. The water is cold. The sensation is grounding. You watch ripples form and fade, carrying small particles downstream. For a moment, this movement is enough to hold your attention completely. You think about hands. Hands drawing water. Hands washing. Hands carrying small containers through quiet streets. You notice how many tasks now involve hands more than tools. Tools have become optional. Hands are reliable. Further along, you see a makeshift washing area. Basins arranged on a low surface. A piece of cloth hangs from a nail, heavy with moisture. Someone has laid soap nearby, small, worn, its edges softened. A woman kneels, washing a garment slowly, She presses fabric against itself, releases it, presses again. Each movement is deliberate, unhurried. The water darkens, then clears as she changes it. She does not look up as you pass. The act feels private, even though it is happening in the open. You continue walking, aware now of how many small necessities shape the day. 1. So is shade. You pause beneath the overhang of a building, letting the sun pass without touching you directly. The air here feels cooler. The relief is subtle, but noticeable. Food appears next in your awareness, not as hunger, but as absence. You notice closed shops, empty shelves visible through broken windows, containers without contents, cooking spaces without smoke. Meals are not being prepared in the usual way. Still, you see signs of eating. A bowl sits on a step with a few grains of rice at the bottom. Someone has eaten carefully, leaving nothing behind. Nearby, a pair of chopsticks rests parallel, aligned neatly despite everything else. You do not feel hunger strongly. Perhaps it is learned to wait. As the afternoon approaches, water becomes less abundant. The pump still works, but the flow is slower now. People adjust without complaint, drawing smaller amounts, spacing their visits. You watch as someone pours water into another's container without being asked. The exchange is brief. No nod, no thanks. The action stands on its own. Small necessities have simplified interactions. You find a place to sit near a low wall. From here you can observe without participating. People pass carrying water, cloth, small bundles of belongings. Nothing unnecessary. You notice how people move differently now. Careful not to spill, careful not to waste energy. Movements have become economical. Your own body mirrors this shift. You adjust your posture slightly to conserve strength. You breathe slowly, evenly. The day feels longer than it should. Water continues to move through the city, visible in ways it never was before. In open containers, on hands, in shallow streams. It reflects light softly, never brightly. You stand again and walk toward the river, drawn by the sound you heard earlier. The path is familiar now. At the riverbank, people gather loosely, spaced apart. Some fill containers, some rinse cloth, some simply stand, watching the water pass. The river does not slow for them. You kneel and rinse your hands once more, letting the water carry away what remains of the city on your skin. You watch as the ripples expand outward, overlapping with others. For a moment, you feel part of a pattern larger than the city. When you stand, your hands feel lighter. As you leave the river behind, you notice the sky beginning to shift. The light is less direct now. Shadows lengthen subtly. People begin to move away from water sources, carrying what they need for the evening. No one lingers longer than necessary. Water has been gathered. That is enough. You walk back through the streets, noticing how damp footprints mark the ground briefly before fading. These marks disappear quickly, leaving no record. Perhaps that is fitting. As you reach a quieter street, you pause to wash your hands one final time, using water saved earlier. The motion feels familiar now, almost comforting. Clean hands, water used, necessities met. The day continues. You begin to notice rooms, not streets, not buildings, but the quiet, enclosed spaces within them. the places shaped by daily repetition, by habits now interrupted. A doorway frames the first one. The door itself is gone, removed or destroyed in a way that feels unimportant now. What remains is the threshold. You pause there, aware that crossing it changes something, even if only slightly. Inside, the room holds its shape. Tatami mats lie unevenly, some shifted, some cracked. Dust has settled into the woven texture, softening the lines that once guided footsteps. The walls stand, though they lean subtly, as if tired from holding themselves upright. Light enters through a broken window, falling across the floor in a quiet rectangle. Within it, particles drift slowly, visible only because the room is so still. You do not step inside immediately. Rooms feel different from streets. Streets belong to everyone. Rooms remember individuals. Eventually, you enter. Your steps are careful, quieter than before. The floor responds with a faint sound, wood acknowledging weight. You stop and listen. Nothing follows. Against one wall, a low shelf remains intact. On it sit small objects arranged with intention. A folded cloth, a shallow bowl, a wooden box that has not been opened. These items are not valuable. They are not symbolic. They are simply present, waiting for hands that have not returned. You do not touch them. Touch would feel like interruption. You move toward the center of the room and notice the smell. Not unpleasant, just old, familiar. The scent of lived-in space that has absorbed years of breath, warmth, and quiet conversation. The room feels occupied, even now. You step back out into the street and continue walking, more aware now of openings, windows without glass, doors ajar, walls broken just enough to reveal what is inside. Each room tells its story without words. In another house, a table stands near a window. One leg has been shortened with a folded piece of paper to keep it level. Someone cared enough to adjust it to make the surface usable. On top of it rests a notebook, open to a page filled with careful writing. The ink has faded slightly, but the lines remain orderly. You do not read. The act of writing feels complete without an audience. Further on, you pass a room that once held several people. The size suggests shared meals, shared evenings. Now the space feels too large for its contents. Cushions lie where they fell, not disturbed. A kettle rests on a small stove, cold. You imagine the last time water was heated here, the sound of it approaching a boil, the moment someone decided it was ready. That decision feels distant. In one corner, a pair of sandals sits neatly aligned. They have not been moved. Dust outlines their shape on the floor, marking their absence as clearly as their presence. You linger longer here. Rooms invite lingering. They hold time differently. As you move through the neighborhood, you begin to recognize patterns. Some rooms are orderly, others disrupted. Some show signs of hurried departure, objects knocked over, drawers pulled open. Others appear untouched, as though their occupants simply stepped outside and never returned. There is no way to know which is which. In a narrow house with a partially collapsed roof, you find a sleeping area. The bedding is still laid out, folded at the edge the way someone preferred it. A pillow bears the faint impression of a head that rested there countless times. You feel the urge to straighten it. You resist. These rooms do not need correction. They are complete as they are. Light shifts as clouds pass overhead. Shadows move across floors and walls, briefly animating the space before settling again. The rooms respond to light more than anything else now. They brighten, they dim, they wait. You leave one house and enter another. This one feels different immediately. The air is cooler. The walls are thicker. Perhaps it belonged to someone older, someone who preferred solidity. The furniture is heavier, the surfaces worn smooth by repeated use. A cabinet door hangs open. Inside, dishes are stacked carefully. No attempt was made to save them. No one carried them away. They remain because they were never meant to leave this room. You close the cabinet gently. The sound is soft but final. You regret it immediately, as though you have changed something irreversible. But the room does not respond. It remains quiet. In a back room, you find a small altar, a simple arrangement, a framed image, a cup that once held water or tea, ash in a shallow dish, disturbed but not scattered. The altar feels attended to, even now. You bow slightly without thinking. The gesture is automatic, learned long ago. It requires no belief, only respect. As you step back outside, you notice how rooms relate to each other. Windows face windows, doorways align across narrow streets. Lives once intersected through these openings, glances exchanged, voices carried. Now the connections remain only in structure. You imagine how sound once traveled through these spaces. Laughter, disagreements, the low murmur of evening conversations, the clatter of dishes. The rooms hold these memories without replaying them. They do not haunt, they simply remember. In one building, you find a workplace rather than a home. Tables arranged in rows, tools laid out carefully. The work was paused mid-process, not finished, not abandoned. Paused. You recognize this feeling. The entire city exists in this state. Paused, but not concluded. You move from room to room slowly, never staying long enough to feel intrusive. Each space receives you briefly, then releases you back into the street. As afternoon approaches, the light grows warmer. It enters rooms at a lower angle, illuminating surfaces differently. Dust becomes golden. Wood glows softly. For a moment, the rooms look almost welcoming. You understand then that rooms are not sad, they are patient. They wait without expectation. You exit the last house and return to the open street, carrying nothing with you. No objects, no stories. Only impressions that will fade gently, like the damp footprints you saw earlier. Behind you, the rooms remain. They remember people. They do not ask for them to return. They simply hold space. Midday arrives quietly. There is no clear moment when morning ends and afternoon begins. The light simply shifts, slightly higher, slightly wider, settling over the city without announcement. Shadows shorten. Surfaces grow warmer to the touch. You notice the change not by the clock, but by the way your body responds. This is usually the time when hunger would appear, not urgently, just enough to remind you of routine, enough to suggest a pause, a meal, a brief return indoors. Today, the feeling does not arrive in the same way. Your stomach remains calm, empty perhaps, but not asking. You walk past places that once prepared food,
A small restaurant stands with its entrance open. Inside, tables remain in orderly rows. Bowls are stacked. A cloth hangs from a hook, stiff now, unmoving. The space smells faintly of oil that has cooled completely. You imagine the last meal served here.
Someone sitting quietly, lifting chopsticks, swallowing without thinking. Someone else wiping the table afterward, preparing it for the next person who never came. The kitchen is silent. Pots sit where they were left. A lid rests half closed on a pot that contains nothing. The stove is cold. Ash remains in the firebox, undisturbed. You do not step inside. Food spaces feel different now. They are not inviting. They do not repel. They simply exist, disconnected from their purpose. Outside, you see a person sitting on a low step, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. They unwrap it slowly, revealing a portion of food that looks carefully measured. They eat without expression, neither hurried nor grateful. Each bite is small. They chew thoroughly, pause, then continue. There is no pleasure visible, but there is no discomfort either. Eating has become functional. You continue walking, aware that your own body mirrors this restraint. Hunger has been replaced by something else. Perhaps fatigue, perhaps caution. Your body seems to understand that resources are limited, that appetite can wait. At a corner, you see a crate that once held vegetables. It is empty now, except for fragments of leaves pressed flat against the wood. Someone has swept the ground nearby, collecting peels and scraps into a small pile. Nothing has been wasted. Midday sun reflects off broken glass, but the light is not harsh. It diffuses through dust, softening its edges. The warmth is noticeable now, settling on your shoulders, your back. You find shade beneath a damaged awning. Others have done the same. They sit or stand quietly spaced apart, each absorbed in their own stillness. No one eats here. No one drinks. The pause is for rest alone. You lean against a wall and close your eyes briefly. Behind your eyelids, there is no rush of thought. No images intrude. The city has trained you into this state, awake, present, but unburdened by anticipation. When you open your eyes again, you notice movement across the street. A woman carries a small pot, holding it close to her body. The smell reaches you faintly. Plain rice, cooked simply, without seasoning. The scent does not awaken hunger. It simply registers. She disappears into a narrow alley. You realize that meals are happening privately now, quietly, away from shared spaces. Kitchens have returned to homes or improvised areas near water. Eating has retreated inward. You walk past a public square. It is empty. Once it would have been filled at this hour. Vendors calling out, people standing in clusters, food changing hands quickly. Now the open space feels too large, exposed. In the center, a stone bench remains. On it rests a cloth covering something small. Perhaps food saved for later. Perhaps something else entirely. You do not look closely. Midday continues. You pass a child sitting on the ground, legs folded neatly, holding a piece of bread broken into careful portions. The child eats slowly, methodically, as if following instructions given long ago. Nearby, an adult watches without comment. No one encourages. No one discourages. The act is allowed to unfold naturally. You feel a faint tightening in your chest, not sadness, not hunger, something quieter. Recognition, perhaps. Food has become a responsibility rather than a pleasure. You walk on. In a shaded street, you see a group of people sharing a container of water, passing it from hand to hand. No food accompanies it. The water seems sufficient for now. Someone laughs briefly. The sound is soft, almost accidental. It surprises everyone, including the person who made it. It fades quickly, leaving no discomfort behind. Midday light reaches into places it did not touch earlier. It reveals dust on high shelves, cracks near ceilings, corners that morning shadows concealed. You notice how these details occupy your attention more fully than thoughts of eating ever could. Your body feels light, not strong, not weak, simply present. You sit on a low wall near a collapsed structure. From here you can see several streets converging, people moving slowly between them. Each person carries something small, a container, a bundle, a cloth. No one carries more than they need. You consider whether to eat something yourself. The thought arises briefly, then settles. You decide it can wait. Waiting feels natural now. The city seems to operate on a different rhythm at midday, slower, more inward. Even movement decreases. People rest where they are, conserving energy. The sun climbs a little higher. Heat settles into stone and wood. You feel it through your clothing. It is not oppressive. It simply exists. You move again, drawn toward the river, not for water this time, but for openness. The breeze there is cooler. As you approach, you notice people sitting along the bank, facing the water. Some hold food, some do not. No one eats quickly. A man breaks a piece of dried food in half, then in half again, until the pieces are small enough to eat slowly. He offers one to someone beside him. The offer is accepted without acknowledgement. You sit a short distance away. From here you can hear the water clearly. Its sound fills the space that conversation once occupied. It does not demand attention. It simply continues. You remain seated for a long time. The absence of hunger becomes noticeable in its own way. It is not discomfort. It is quiet restraint. Your body has adjusted, aligning itself with the slower pace of the day. Eventually, someone stands and leaves. Others follow at irregular intervals. Midday begins to soften. The light shifts slightly, losing its intensity. Shadows lengthen again, signaling the approach of afternoon. You stand and walk back toward the streets, passing once more by food spaces that remain unused. The city does not mind. It has learned to endure pauses. As you walk, you feel a subtle change within yourself. Hunger does not return, but awareness does. A recognition that the day is moving forward, even if it feels suspended. Midday has passed without demanding anything from you. You have eaten little or nothing, and yet you continue. As afternoon deepens, you begin to notice bodies more than faces. Not expressions, not identities, but the way people move through space, the way they carry weight, the way time settles differently into muscle and bone. Movement has changed. It is slower now, not from hesitation, but from consideration. Each step is chosen carefully, as though the ground itself has become something to negotiate rather than trust. You walk along a street where debris remains scattered unevenly. Some people step around it with practiced ease. Others pause, adjusting their footing before continuing.
No one rushes. Rushing feels unnecessary and unsafe. You notice how often people stop, not to rest exactly, just to recalibrate. A pause here, a hand against a wall there, a moment spent standing still, letting balance return. Your own body participates in this rhythm without conscious effort. Your stride shortens, your shoulders lower slightly, your breathing slows, aligning with the pace around you.
Time stretches. You pass an older man leaning against a post. His eyes are closed, but he is not asleep. One hand rests on the wood, fingers curled loosely, as if holding on to the present moment itself. When he opens his eyes, there is no surprise in them. He adjusts his stance and continues walking. No words are exchanged. Further ahead, you see a woman walking with deliberate precision. One foot is favored over the other. Each step lands softly, testing the ground before committing weight. Her arms hang close to her sides, conserving energy. She moves with patience, not frustration. The city has taught this patience quickly. You become aware of how many people carry small injuries without acknowledgement. Wrapped hands, bandaged forearms, slight limps that are neither hidden nor explained. In the past, these would have drawn attention. Now, they are simply part of the landscape. Bodies adapt. You stop near a low wall and sit. Sitting feels different now. The act is slower, more intentional. You lower yourself carefully, aware of how joints respond, how balance shifts. When you settle, your body releases tension gradually rather than all at once. You sit longer than planned. From this position, you observe the flow of movement around you. It is irregular, uncoordinated, yet somehow harmonious. People move independently, but at similar speeds, as if following an unspoken tempo. No one overtakes another, no one urges anyone forward. The afternoon light highlights these movements gently. Shadows stretch behind people as they walk, elongated reflections of bodies still adjusting to gravity and time. You stand again, slowly. As you walk, you become aware of fatigue, not sudden, not overwhelming, but present. It settles into your legs, your lower back, your shoulders. You accept it without complaint. Fatigue feels appropriate. The city offers places to rest, and people take advantage of them without hesitation. Steps become seats. Curbs become benches. Doorways become brief shelters. You see someone lying down in the shade, eyes closed, arms folded loosely across their chest. Their breathing is steady. They are not hiding. They are simply resting where they are. Sleep has begun to appear in unexpected places. Not deep sleep, not restorative, but enough to quiet the body for a while. You continue toward a wider road where the surface is smoother. Movement here is slightly easier. People seem to relax marginally, shoulders loosening, steps lengthening just a little. Still, no one hurries. The idea of on time has dissolved. You think about how bodies once moved through these streets, quickly, purposefully, carrying plans, schedules, expectations. That way of moving feels distant now. The present demands something else. Care. As you walk, you notice how often hands are used for balance. Touching walls, gripping railings, resting briefly on door frames. These gestures are gentle, instinctive. The city itself has become a support. In one place, you see a group of people lifting debris together. They move slowly, communicating through glances and pauses rather than speech. When one person adjusts their grip, the others wait. The object is heavy, but the process is unhurried. They set it down carefully, stepping back at the same time, as though choreographed. Then they stand, catching their breath, hands on knees or resting at their sides. No one claps, no one comments. The task completes itself quietly. You walk past a child walking beside an adult. The child's steps are smaller, but they keep pace. The adult matches them unconsciously, slowing just enough to remain aligned. Bodies adjust to each other naturally. Further along, you notice a man sitting on the ground, legs stretched out, examining his foot. He removes his shoe slowly, inspects the sole, then replaces it. The action is careful, deliberate, as if acknowledging that the foot must carry him further. You feel a similar awareness in your own feet. The ground feels different beneath them, uneven, unpredictable. You place each step with attention, listening to the subtle feedback of pressure and balance. Time continues to pass, not measured in hours, but in sensations. Warmth on skin, tension easing, fatigue deepening slightly, then stabilizing. You find yourself stopping again near a shaded wall. This time you lean back fully, letting your weight rest against the surface. The wall is warm, solid. It holds you without effort. You close your eyes briefly. When you open them, the light has shifted again, slightly lower, slightly softer. Afternoon is beginning to move toward evening. Bodies respond to this change instinctively. Movement slows further. Pauses lengthen. People begin to settle closer to where they intend to remain for the night. You notice fewer people walking long distances now. More staying close, more sitting. You walk past a group of people sharing a quiet moment. Someone adjusts a bandage on another's arm. The motion is careful, practiced. The person receiving the attention remains still, trusting. The exchange is intimate, but unremarkable. Care has become ordinary. You continue on, feeling the accumulated weight of the day in your body. Not exhaustion exactly, but density. A sense of having moved through many moments, slowly. You sit once more, this time on a step near a familiar street. From here, you watch the city move at its reduced pace. A person stands, then sits again. Another shifts position, stretching gently. Someone walks a short distance, then stops. No one seems concerned by these pauses. Bodies are allowed to dictate the rhythm now. As the light continues to fade, you feel a quiet understanding settle in. Survival is not dramatic. It is patient. It is careful. It is the decision to place one foot down gently, to rest when rest is needed, to move again only when ready. The city breathes this lesson into its people without words. You stand slowly and take a few final steps before stopping again. Time moves forward, and bodies move with it, carefully, deliberately, without hurry. As the afternoon settles further, you begin to notice something subtle taking shape around you. It is not organization. It is not instruction. It is cooperation. Quiet, unspoken, unfolding without leadership or announcement. No one calls for help, and yet help appears. You see it first in small gestures. Someone pauses while walking, holding a door frame steady as another passes beneath it. Someone bends to pick up an object that is not theirs and places it gently on a nearby surface where it will be easier to find later. These actions happen without acknowledgement. They are not favors. They are simply responses. You walk along a street where a section of wall has collapsed outward. Stones lie scattered across the road, partially blocking passage. One by one, people stop when they reach it. No one directs. A man lifts a stone and moves it to the side. Another joins him, choosing a different piece. A third arrives and waits briefly, then begins clearing smaller fragments. They work in silence. The sound of stone against stone is soft, rhythmic. Each movement is careful, not strained. When someone needs space, others pause. When someone finishes their piece, they step aside without comment. The path opens gradually. When it is clear enough, people resume walking through, slowing slightly as they pass, mindful of those still working. No one thanks them. No one stays to supervise. The task dissolves as naturally as it formed. You continue walking, aware that cooperation here does not require planning. It arises from shared awareness of need. Further ahead, you notice a woman sitting on the ground, struggling quietly with a bundle that has come undone. Cloth spills across the street, tangled, awkward. She does not ask for assistance. Another person kneels beside her without hesitation. They help gather the cloth, folding it simply, efficiently. Their hands move with familiarity, as if this action has been performed many times before. When the bundle is secure again, the helper stands and leaves. No conversation follows. The woman remains seated for a moment longer, then continues on her way. You realize that people are watching each other now, not out of curiosity, but out of readiness. Eyes scan not for danger, but for imbalance. When something tips too far, someone steadies it. This attentiveness feels collective, but not coordinated. Each person acts independently, guided by the same quiet understanding. You pass a water source where several people have gathered. Containers are arranged neatly nearby. One person draws water, then steps aside. Another takes their place. At some point, the handle sticks slightly. The flow slows. Without comment, someone pours water from their container into another's, evening the amounts. The handle is adjusted gently, coaxed back into motion. The exchange is brief. No one keeps count. You linger nearby, watching the pattern repeat. There is no sense of ownership here. Water belongs to whoever needs it at that moment. As you move on, you see a group working together to move debris away from a doorway. The space behind it is dark, but intact. Someone inside waits patiently while others clear the entrance. When the doorway is accessible again, the person inside steps out slowly, nods once, and walks away. The group disperses immediately. You begin to notice how cooperation ends as quietly as it begins. There are no lingering discussions, no evaluations of success. Tasks conclude themselves. This quiet efficiency carries through the city. In one area, someone sits beside another, adjusting a bandage. The person being helped remains still, trusting. When the bandage is secure, The helper presses it gently once more, ensuring it will hold. Then they leave. You observe how this kind of assistance does not create obligation. There is no sense of debt, no expectation of return. The action exists only in the moment it is needed. As you walk, you reflect on how different this feels from before. Previously, cooperation required structure, roles, authority, words. Now, it emerges from proximity and awareness. You reach a small open space where people have gathered loosely. Some sit, some stand. A few share food quietly, breaking it into small portions. A container is passed from one person to another. Each takes a small amount. No one takes more than they need. When the container empties, it is set aside without comment. You sit nearby, not part of the group, but not excluded. The space accommodates you naturally. Someone shifts position slightly to make room. No words are exchanged. You sit and observe. There is a rhythm here, subtle, unspoken. People adjust their movements in response to others. If someone stands, others shift to allow space. If someone rests, the area grows still. This rhythm feels fragile but steady. You notice that cooperation here does not rely on trust in individuals. It relies on trust in behavior. People assume that others will act reasonably, and so they do. As the light continues to soften, cooperation shifts toward preparation. People begin to gather what they will need for the evening. Not much, just enough. Someone helps another secure a temporary shelter using fabric and rope. The knots are simple, functional. When finished, the helper steps back, checks stability, then leaves. The shelter remains. In another place, you see someone distributing small pieces of cloth, perhaps for bandages, perhaps for warmth. The cloth changes hands quietly, without ceremony. You notice how no one hoards. Possession feels heavy now. You walk past a familiar street and see that someone has swept debris from one side, creating a narrow path. Others follow it instinctively, reinforcing it with their steps. The path becomes accepted without being named. This is how order returns, not through rules, but through repetition. As evening approaches, cooperation becomes more subtle. People stop performing visible tasks and begin offering presence instead, sitting nearby, standing watchfully, remaining awake while others rest. You see someone sitting at the edge of a group, facing outward, eyes scanning slowly. They are not guarding, they are simply attentive. The role rotates naturally. As you move on, you feel a quiet warmth settle in your chest. Not comfort exactly, but recognition. This is how communities persist. Not through grand gestures, not through speeches, but through quiet cooperation, practiced moment by moment. You stop once more at the edge of a street, watching people move past one another with care. Someone stumbles slightly. Another steadies them with a light touch, then releases. No apology is spoken. The contact is brief, sufficient. You remain standing as the light fades further, the city transitioning gently toward evening. Cooperation does not end with the day. It simply changes form. People drift closer together, not in crowds, but in proximity. Distances shorten. Awareness sharpens. You take a few more steps, then stop. Around you, the city breathes quietly. Hands continue to help hands.
Movements adjust to movements. Needs are met without naming them. Time moves forward. And cooperation moves with it, softly, steadily, without sound.
The light begins to change again. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It simply lowers itself, softening as it moves, settling across the city with less insistence than before. You notice it first on the stone beneath your feet. Where the ground was harsh and pale at midday, it now appears warmer, textured. Cracks and fragments catch the light differently, revealing edges you had not seen earlier. Broken stone becomes visible not as damage, but as surface. The city feels quieter, not because fewer people are present, but because movement has slowed even further. Afternoon is loosening its grip. You walk along a familiar street, though it no longer feels familiar in the way it once did. Light has redrawn its boundaries. Walls glow softly on one side and retreat into shadow on the other. The line between brightness and darkness stretches and shifts as you move. You pause to watch this boundary travel slowly across the ground. It does not hurry. You notice how debris casts longer shadows now. Small stones create dark shapes that extend far beyond their size. A broken beam throws a line of shade that crosses the street like a quiet marker of time. You step around it instinctively, as though it holds meaning. Broken stone lies everywhere, on roads, beside buildings, in courtyards that once held nothing but open space. Earlier, it demanded attention for safety. Now, it demands attention for different reasons. Light has transformed it. Surfaces that looked dull and heavy in the morning now reflect softly. Chips of masonry glow faintly. Dust settles into grooves, catching the sun in thin lines. You find yourself slowing down again, not from fatigue, but from observation. The city invites looking. You pass a partially collapsed wall. Its interior layers are exposed, brick beneath plaster, stone beneath brick. The structure reveals itself honestly now, stripped of its outer finish. Light enters this exposed section at an angle, illuminating it briefly. For a moment, the wall appears deliberate, almost designed. Then the light shifts, and it fades back into quiet. You think about how much of the city's life was once hidden indoors, behind walls and doors. Now, interiors and exteriors blend together. Light travels freely through spaces it was never meant to enter. You walk past a courtyard where the ground is cracked unevenly. Afternoon light pools in the lower sections, turning them pale gold. Shadows rest in the raised edges, deepening their contours. Someone sits at the edge of the courtyard, watching the light as you are. They do not acknowledge you. There is no need. Watching has become an activity in itself. You move on, drawn toward areas where the stone is older, steps worn smooth by decades of use, walls that once stood as boundaries now reduced to outlines. Here, the light behaves differently. It clings to surfaces, emphasizing wear rather than damage. The smoothness of stone reveals how many people passed this way before today. You place your hand briefly against a wall. It is warm. The warmth feels unexpected, but grounding. It reminds you that the city still absorbs and releases heat, still participates in the daily cycle of light and dark. Afternoon light is generous. It does not discriminate between intact and broken. It touches everything equally. You continue walking, passing through an area where stone fragments have been arranged deliberately. Someone has stacked them along the side of the road, creating a narrow path. The stones are irregular, mismatched, but the line they form is careful. Light settles on the tops of them, leaving their bases in shadow. The path feels intentional. You follow it briefly, then leave it behind. Light continues to guide movement subtly. People gravitate toward shade as the sun lowers, choosing paths where buildings block direct exposure. Others seek the warmth deliberately, sitting where sunlight still reaches. Both choices are made quietly. You notice how people position themselves relative to light now. Standing just at the edge of shadow, sitting where the sun touches shoulders but not faces, adjusting posture slightly to remain comfortable. These adjustments are small, instinctive. The city is teaching attentiveness. As you walk, you begin to notice how silence feels different under this light. Morning silence was empty. Midday silence was suspended. Afternoon silence feels settled. Sound still exists, footsteps, fabric shifting, stone moving gently, but it feels absorbed by the environment. Nothing echoes. You reach a place where the street opens toward a broad area of broken ground. Once, this may have been a market or gathering space. Now, stone fragments cover the surface unevenly, like a rough mosaic. Afternoon light stretches across it, revealing patterns formed by chance. You stand at the edge and take it in slowly. This space is not being used, not avoided either. It simply waits. The light makes it beautiful in a quiet way. Not beautiful enough to draw attention, but enough to soften its presence. You walk across carefully, placing your feet where stone is stable. Shadows stretch ahead of you now, moving faster than you do. You become aware of your own shadow. It is longer than before, thinner, less distinct at the edges. It follows you without urgency. At the far side of the open space, you sit on a low stone and rest. From here, you can see several buildings catching the afternoon light. Their surfaces glow unevenly, revealing textures you had never noticed when they were whole. Cracks appear as lines of history rather than damage. You think about how light reveals truth slowly. Not all at once, not dramatically, but patiently. People pass nearby, their shadows stretching alongside them. Occasionally, two shadows overlap briefly, then separate. The moment is fleeting. You close your eyes for a short while. Behind your eyelids, the warmth of the light remains. You feel it on your skin, steady, reassuring. When you open your eyes again, the light has shifted slightly lower. Afternoon is thinning. The city responds gradually. People move less. Conversations, already rare, cease entirely. Those who are walking seem to do so with clear intention, heading toward places they will remain. You stand and walk again, guided now by the soft glow of sun on stone. You follow the light through a narrow street where it filters between buildings, illuminating only a thin strip of ground. You walk within this strip briefly, then step into shadow. The contrast is noticeable, but gentle. Stone cools quickly once the sun leaves it. You pass a familiar intersection. Earlier, it felt empty and wide. Now, under afternoon light, it feels contained. Shadows define its edges clearly. You stop in the center. Light touches your face briefly, then moves on. You realize that this light has touched everyone today. It has marked time without clocks. It has softened surfaces without repairing them. It has revealed details without commentary. Broken stone remains broken. But under afternoon light, it feels less heavy. You continue walking as the sun lowers further. Light, thinning into something softer, less direct. The city begins to prepare, not through action, but through stillness. Afternoon is almost finished. The light lingers on broken stone a moment longer, then slowly lets go. As the afternoon light fades further, damage becomes easier to see. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that announces itself loudly, but the small, ordinary damage that exists everywhere once you begin to look closely. A cracked step, a torn sleeve, a broken hinge that still functions, but not smoothly. You notice these things now because people are beginning to address them. Not all at once, not completely, just enough. You walk past a doorway where someone is tying a loose board into place using rope that looks too thin for the task. The knot is careful. The tension is tested gently. When it holds, the person steps back and nods once, to no one in particular. The doorway is usable again. It is not perfect. It does not need to be. Further along, you see someone sitting on the ground, repairing a shoe. The sole has begun to separate, creating an uneven step. The person presses it back into place, threading something narrow through the gap, wire perhaps, or string pulled from fabric. The work is slow. Hands move with patience, not skill born from training, but skill learned through necessity. When the shoe is finished, it looks different from before, slightly misshapen, reinforced in odd places. But it will carry weight. You continue walking, noticing more signs of quiet repair. A window opening has been covered with cloth, secured at the corners. Light still passes through, softened. The cloth moves gently with the air, breathing for the building. A chair with one short leg has been propped up using a flat stone. Someone has tested it, adjusted the position until it balances. It is not elegant, it is effective. You sit briefly on a low wall and watch. Damage and repair coexist here without conflict. Nothing is fully broken, nothing is fully restored. The city exists in between. You pass a person tending to their hands. One finger is wrapped in cloth, stained dark where it has absorbed blood earlier. The person unwraps it slowly, inspects the skin beneath, then rewraps it more loosely. The wound is small. It will heal on its own. This attention feels important. Not dramatic medical care, just awareness. Nearby, someone else is adjusting a bandage on their arm, loosening it slightly to allow circulation. They flex their fingers, testing movement. Satisfied, they continue on. Bodies, like buildings, are being repaired quietly. You walk through a residential area again, noticing how many repairs are temporary by design. Pieces of wood held in place by rope. Cracks filled with cloth or paper. Roof tiles repositioned, not replaced. No one is rebuilding yet. Rebuilding requires future certainty. What happens now is stabilization. You see a group working together to clear a drain that has become blocked with debris. They kneel beside it, removing fragments one by one. The water begins to flow again, slowly at first, then more freely. When it does, they stop. There is no need to improve further. The water moving is enough. You watch as someone sweeps a narrow path across a floor covered in dust and fragments. The sweeping is slow, deliberate. The pile grows, gradually contained to one side. When finished, the person does not dispose of the debris immediately. They leave it neatly arranged, as if deciding later what should be done with it. Repair does not rush. You continue walking as the light thins into something gentler, cooler. Shadows deepen. Details become softer, less sharp. You notice how repairs alter the appearance of spaces. A patched wall looks different from an intact one. It carries evidence of attention. A mended object feels more personal than one that has never broken. These changes do not restore what was lost. They acknowledge it. You stop near a house where someone is repairing a cooking surface. Stones are being repositioned to create a level base. The person tests it by placing a pot on top, adjusting until it sits evenly. The action is methodical. Cooking may happen later, or not at all. The repair stands regardless. You walk past a place where clothing has been laid out on a flat surface. The torn fabric is being stitched slowly, the needle moving in small arcs. The stitches are uneven, visible. They hold. You realize that quiet repair is not about hiding damage. It is about continuing despite it. As you move through the streets, you notice fewer people walking long distances. More are stationary now, focused on small tasks, fixing, adjusting, securing. The city has shifted into a different mode. Afternoon work is ending. Evening preparation has begun. You sit again, this time near a corner where several repairs are visible at once. A tied beam, a propped door, a mended step. None of them draw attention to themselves. They simply function. You think about how repair once meant restoration, returning something to its original state. That idea feels distant now. Repair here means adaptation. Making something usable again, even if it looks different, even if it will not last. The sky continues to dim, light fading into muted tones. Repairs become harder to see, but their presence remains felt. A surface feels more stable underfoot. A doorway opens more easily. A roof no longer rattles in the breeze. These are quiet successes. You stand and walk toward a familiar street, passing someone who is reinforcing a window frame. They tap gently, listening to the sound it makes. Satisfied, they stop. No one observes. No one evaluates. The repair exists for the person who needed it. As you continue, you notice how this work affects movement. People step more confidently where repairs have been made. Paths form around stabilized areas. Spaces regain limited function. The city becomes slightly more navigable. This is not progress in the usual sense. It is survival extended. You pass a child watching an adult repair something small, a handle perhaps, or a latch. The child does not help, but they observe closely. The knowledge is being passed quietly, without instruction. Repair teaches by example. You walk on, feeling the accumulated presence of these small efforts around you. They do not transform the city, they support it. As evening approaches, repairs slow. Light is no longer sufficient for detailed work. People finish what they are doing or leave tasks incomplete without concern. Incomplete work is acceptable. Tomorrow exists, even if it is uncertain. You sit once more, feeling the day's movement settle into your body. The city around you is quieter now, but not inert. Repairs remain where they were made, holding structures together just enough. Quiet damage remains. Quiet repair remains with it. Neither demands attention. They coexist. As darkness begins to approach, The city carries these small acts forward, stabilized not by force or speed, but by patience. You remain there for a moment longer, aware that this careful balance between damage and repair is what allows the night to come gently. And it does. Evening approaches without ceremony. There is no signal for it, no announcement, only a gradual thinning of light and a quiet understanding shared by everyone who remains awake. Courage, in this moment, does not arrive as a feeling. It does not rise in the chest. It does not harden the jaw or quicken the breath. It appears instead in repetition. You notice it in how people continue doing what must be done, even as energy fades. In how movement becomes slower but does not stop. In how decisions are made without discussion, as if already agreed upon. You walk through a street where someone is lifting a small container of water. They pause halfway, rest briefly, then lift again. The task is not impressive. The container is not heavy by ordinary standards, but the repetition matters. They do not look around to see if anyone is watching. They finish the task and move on. This is what courage looks like here. You continue walking, aware of how your own body feels. There is stiffness now, a quiet heaviness in the legs. Each step requires a little more attention than before. You take it anyway. Around you, others do the same. No one rushes, no one complains. The pace of the city has adjusted to what bodies can reasonably give. Courage has learned restraint. You pass a person sitting on the edge of a step, resting. Their posture suggests fatigue, but not defeat. After a moment, they stand again and resume walking, slower than before. No one encourages them. No one needs to. You begin to understand that courage here is not about facing danger. The danger has already passed. It is about continuing to exist afterward, when adrenaline is gone and exhaustion remains. You walk by a doorway where someone is organizing belongings, placing items in a particular order, not for efficiency, but for reassurance. Objects returned to familiar positions feel stabilizing. This, too, is courage. Choosing order when disorder would be easier. As light fades further, people begin to settle into places they will remain for the night. You see them arranging sleeping spaces, adjusting clothing, making surfaces as comfortable as possible. These preparations are modest. No one expects comfort. They expect rest. You stop near a group sitting quietly together. They do not speak. Their closeness is not emotional display. It is practical. Shared warmth. Shared awareness. You notice how people lean slightly toward one another without touching. Connection without demand. Courage does not require speech. You continue walking, noticing small moments of care that would once have gone unnoticed. Someone offering a piece of cloth without explanation. Someone stepping aside to allow another to pass without effort. These gestures are not heroic. They are automatic. The city is practicing a different kind of strength now, one that does not announce itself. You feel it in how people avoid stepping on unstable ground, even when tired, in how they wait patiently rather than push forward, in how they accept limitations without frustration. This acceptance is not surrender. It is calculation. Bodies and minds conserving what remains. You sit on a low wall again, letting your weight settle. Around you, evening deepens.
shadows soften, edges blur. You think about how courage is often imagined as something loud, visible, unmistakable. But here, courage is quiet enough to blend into routine. It looks like staying, like waking up tomorrow, like choosing not to give in to panic or despair, not because hope is strong, but because panic would waste energy. You watch as someone checks on another person without drawing attention, adjusting a blanket, shifting a position slightly to ease discomfort. They do not stay. They do not wait for gratitude. They move on.
You realize that courage here does not seek recognition. Recognition would require explanation, and explanation requires energy. Silence is more efficient. You stand and walk again, your movements careful, deliberate. The city feels smaller now, contained by darkness. The sky has dimmed into deepening blue-gray, and the last light lingers near the horizon. You notice how people position themselves relative to darkness, choosing spots where shapes are still discernible, where movement feels safer. Fear exists, but it is managed quietly. No one speaks of it. Courage, you realize, is not the absence of fear here. It is the decision not to amplify it. You pass a person who pauses at a corner, takes a breath, then continues. The breath is subtle, almost invisible, but you see it. That pause holds courage within it. Further along, you notice someone adjusting their posture repeatedly, trying to find a position that does not cause pain. They shift, test, adjust again. They do not complain. They are negotiating with their body. You think about how courage often involves negotiation, knowing when to push, when to stop, when to accept discomfort as temporary. This knowledge is being learned collectively. You walk through a narrow street where light no longer reaches the ground. Movement here is slower. People feel their way forward with memory and caution. Someone holds a wall lightly as they walk, fingers brushing stone. Touch replaces sight. Courage adapts to circumstance. You pause and listen. The city is very quiet now, but not silent. Breathing, fabric shifting, a distant sound of metal touching stone. These sounds feel closer in the dark. They are not threatening. They are reminders of presence. You find a place to sit once more, settling in as night approaches fully. Around you, others do the same. The city is transitioning into rest. Not sleep yet, just stillness. You reflect on the day, not as a sequence of events, but as a series of decisions made quietly. To walk, to help, to repair, to wait, to stop. None of these decisions required bravery as it is usually defined. They required persistence. This persistence is everywhere now, woven into the rhythm of the city. You feel it in your own breathing, slower, steadier. The urgency that once filled the air has dissipated. What remains is endurance. You understand now that ordinary courage is not a single moment. It is sustained attention over time. It is choosing not to collapse inward when nothing demands heroics. As darkness settles completely, the city holds itself together through these small acts. No one will write about them individually. No one will name them. But they are enough. You remain there, allowing the weight of the day to rest where it is, knowing that courage has already done its work, not loudly, not visibly, but thoroughly. And in that quiet completion, night arrives gently.
Night does not arrive all at once. It gathers,
It settles into corners first, then along walls, then across the open spaces where light has nowhere left to hold. The city does not resist it. There is no urgency to stay awake, no attempt to extend the day. Night is expected. You notice how people prepare for it without discussion. Movements are slower, quieter. Tasks that were left unfinished remain unfinished without concern. The need to complete everything has passed. What matters now is continuity. You walk through streets that are almost still. A few figures move carefully, but most have found places to remain. Doorways, corners, open rooms, spaces that offer even a small sense of enclosure. Night after night, these places will be used again. Someone adjusts their position on the ground, shifting weight from one side to the other. The movement is small, practiced. They have done this before. They know how to settle in without effort. You sit as well, letting your body lower itself naturally. The ground is cooler now. Stone that held warmth all afternoon has begun to release it back into the air. The temperature change is subtle but noticeable, especially when you stop moving. Night teaches stillness. Around you, breathing becomes the dominant sound. Not synchronized, not deliberate, just present. Fabric brushes against stone. A quiet cough breaks the silence, then fades. No one reacts. These sounds are familiar now. You realize that night here is not a single event, but a repetition. One night blending into the next. Each evening folding itself into memory until the difference between them becomes less important than their sameness. Night after night, people will lie down. Night after night, they will wake again. This rhythm feels essential. You observe how people arrange themselves to sleep. Some lie flat. Others remain partially upright, leaning against walls or objects. Limbs are placed carefully to avoid strain. Shoes are loosened, but not removed entirely. There is an awareness of vulnerability, but no panic. Caution exists without fear. You notice someone pulling fabric closer around their shoulders. Not dramatically, just enough to trap warmth. Another person places a small object beside their head, something familiar, something grounding. These gestures repeat across the city. They are learned. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again, adjusting to the darkness. Shapes are less distinct now, but presence is still readable. You know where people are by the way space feels occupied. Night sharpens different senses. Sound carries differently. Distance feels altered. Time slows, not because anything has changed, but because there is nothing demanding attention. You think about how night was once associated with rest, with separation from work and obligation. Here, night still offers rest, but not as relief, more as continuation. The body requires it, and so it is taken. You remain seated, breathing steadily, feeling the weight of the day settle fully now. Fatigue no longer feels heavy. It feels accepted. This is the difference. Night after night, acceptance will make rest possible. Somewhere nearby, someone shifts position again, exhaling softly as they find comfort. Another person rolls slightly, then becomes still. No one speaks. Speech would interrupt the rhythm that is formed. You understand that night is not meant for processing or reflection here. Those things require energy. Night is for holding what already exists, unchanged. Thoughts slow. You find that your mind no longer moves quickly from idea to idea. Instead, it rests on simple observations. The texture of stone beneath you, the temperature of the air against your skin, the steady rise and fall of your breathing. These details are enough. The city feels held together by this collective rest. Not asleep yet, not deeply, but suspended. Night after night, this suspension allows the city to continue. You think about tomorrow, but not in detail, just as an abstract presence. Morning will come, people will stand again, movement will resume. But none of that is required now. Night removes expectation. You listen as the city settles further. Movement becomes rare. When it happens, it is cautious and brief. Someone standing to adjust their position. Someone walking a short distance, then stopping. There is no wandering. Everyone knows where they are. You feel how your own body responds to this stillness. Muscles soften slightly. Breathing deepens without effort. The instinct to remain alert fades. This is not sleep yet. It is preparation. Night after night, the body learns how to rest even when circumstances are uncertain. It adapts. You reflect on how this adaptation is quiet, uncelebrated. No one acknowledges it as strength, but it is. The ability to sleep, even lightly, even briefly, is a form of resilience. You lie back slightly, finding a position that supports you. The surface beneath you is firm, but familiar now. Your body adjusts automatically. You notice how darkness feels less complete than you expected. There are gradients, slightly lighter areas where the sky reflects faintly, deeper shadows near walls and corners. Your eyes adjust. You can still see outlines. Night here is not total. It allows awareness without demand. Somewhere farther away, a distant sound echoes faintly. Something metallic, perhaps. But it does not linger. It does not provoke movement or alarm. The city absorbs it. Night has that effect. You feel time stretching, not forward, but outward. Minutes feel wide, unpressured. There is no reason to count them. Night after night, this spaciousness becomes familiar. You wonder briefly how many nights will pass like this. The thought does not carry anxiety. It is simply noted, then released. The future does not require planning right now. The present is sufficient. You sense that others around you are experiencing something similar. Not shared consciously, but aligned. Breathing patterns slow together. Stillness deepens collectively. This is not community in the expressive sense. It is coexistence. Night supports it. Your thoughts begin to drift more freely now, no longer anchored to observation. Images appear briefly, stone in afternoon light, hands repairing small things, quiet movement through streets. They pass without attachment. Sleep begins to approach gently. You do not force it. Night after night, forcing sleep is unnecessary. The body knows when to let go. You remain aware, but loosely. The city around you fades slightly, not disappearing, just receding. Even in this near sleep state, you understand that night is doing its work. It is not erasing the day. It is carrying it forward, intact, into tomorrow. You breathe, you rest, and night
familiar now, settles in once more.
Morning will come again. Not because it is expected, not because anyone is waiting for it. It will come simply because time continues. But for now, night holds the city in a quiet balance. And within that stillness, what remains becomes clearer. Not the buildings, not the streets, not even the damage. What remains is subtler. You lie where you have settled, aware of your own breathing and little else. The city around you has faded into a soft presence, felt rather than seen, known rather than observed. In this space between sleep and waking, the question of what remains is not asked directly. It answers itself. What remains is habit. The way people place their hands when resting, the way bodies adjust instinctively to the ground, the way breath finds its rhythm without instruction. These things existed before this day. They continue now. You think, briefly, of how much of daily life is made of repetition. Actions performed so often they no longer require attention. Standing, sitting, walking, resting. Even here, even now, these patterns persist. They are not broken. What remains is memory, but not memory as story. Memory as posture, as expectation, as the quiet understanding of where to step, how to move, when to stop. You notice that your body remembers comfort even in discomfort. It knows how to soften muscles that have worked all day. It knows how to settle into stillness. This knowledge was not taught. It was accumulated. The city, too, holds this kind of memory. In the way paths form naturally where people walk most often, in the way corners become resting places, in the way broken spaces still guide movement, memory shapes what remains without speaking. You feel the night deepen but not grow heavier. Darkness now feels complete but gentle. It no longer presses against awareness. Instead, it holds it. What remains is presence, not attention, not alertness, simply being. You are here. Others are here. That is enough. There is no need to name what has been lost in order to understand what remains. Loss has already been accounted for. It has settled into the background, becoming part of the environment rather than an interruption. What remains exists alongside it. You sense the city breathing slowly, not as a single organism, but as many small ones sharing the same space. Each breath independent, yet part of a larger rhythm. This rhythm does not aim toward anything. It sustains itself. You feel your own breathing align with it naturally, without effort. What remains is time. Not measured, not counted. Time as duration. The sense that moments continue to unfold, even when nothing changes. Night after night, this duration will hold the city. Morning after morning, it will release it again. Time does not need permission. It simply moves. You begin to drift further now, thoughts loosening their grip. But a few impressions remain, hovering gently. Stone warmed by afternoon light. Hands repairing small things. Quiet movement through familiar streets. These impressions do not demand interpretation. They exist as they are. You realize that what remains
is not meaning. Meaning requires explanation, context, resolution. What remains is continuity. The simple fact that life continues in small, unremarkable ways. People will wake. They will stand. They will move through the day again, not heroically, not triumphantly, just steadily. You feel the last tension leave your body. The need to observe fades. Awareness softens into something broader, less defined. This is where rest fully arrives. What remains now is sensation rather than thought. The contact between body and ground. The gentle rise and fall of breath. The faint awareness of space around you. These sensations do not change. They do not need to. The city no longer feels like a collection of separate elements. It feels whole, not intact, but cohesive, held together by routine, by adaptation, by the quiet agreement to continue. This is what remains when everything else falls away. Not structures, not narratives, but the ability to persist without explanation. You let this understanding settle without effort. It does not need to be remembered later. It does not need to be carried forward consciously. It will remain on its own. Sleep draws closer now, no longer approaching but present. Thought dissolves into rest, and in that rest, the city remains. So do you.